Today we start our discussion for Chapter 10, which is on information systems and supply chain management. So this chapter gets into a lot of detail regarding how a retailer can use information systems and supply chain management to create a sustainable competitive advantage. So if you remember back to Chapter 5, we talked about how retailers create that sustainable competitive advantage, and this is one way to do so. So let's first define supply chain management. Supply chain management is a set of activities and techniques that retailers can employ to efficiently and effectively manage the flow of merchandise from their vendors to their customers. So remember, like we talked about in Chapter 1, retailers are the connection between the manufacturer and the customer. So it's the retailer's job to work with all members of that supply chain to make sure the merchandise is available when and where the customers want it. And so that efficient supply chain management can help the retailer build a sustainable competitive advantage. And there's a lot of reasons how it can be used to create that advantage. So let's kind of go through those. Improved product availability, right, is a way that supply chain management and information systems help create that advantage. Efficient supply chain management provides benefits to the retailers and to the customers, right? So first of all, there are fewer stockouts. And a stockout occurs when a product that a customer wants is not available. So if you go to a store and the product you went to get is not there, it's because it's stocked out. The retailer doesn't have that. The customer gets upset and the retailer loses a sale. So improved product availability does reduce stockouts, and it allows for fewer rain checks. So let's define a rain check. A rain check is given so that a customer can come back and get a product at a certain price when the product is back in stock. The downside for that, right, is that the customer might go elsewhere in the meantime. And studies do show that 40% of customers will go to another store to buy the product, even if they have to pay a little bit more to get it now if it's stocked out at your retail store. So that improved product availability helps create that strategic advantage. Secondly, supply chain management and information systems can help retailers tailor their assortment of products. Most national retailers can adjust their assortments based on a local climate, and they can use their systems to adjust those individual store assortments based on consumer needs. Having efficient supply chain management and information systems also helps with inventory turnover, and it leads to a higher ROA. So these two things are very important, and we will talk about them in more detail when we get to Chapter 6. But do note that having efficient supply chain management and information systems can help lead to your improved inventory turnover and a higher ROA. So let's talk about a few activities that a retailer participates in supply chain management. So these are all the activities that retailers undertake to keep merchandise in stock. So first of all, a retailer has to forecast sales and inventory for each product category and each SKU that they sell. And so they keep track of all of that. They have to monitor sales to detect deviation from the forecast. So even though you might forecast that you're going to sell 20 items of a particular product, you might actually only sell 10. So then you have too many. So you need to notify your supplier you don't need to get another shipment. Or if you run out, you might need to get a shipment quicker. So monitoring those sales to detect deviation from the forecast is an important activity. Retailers are also responsible for transporting merchandise from their distribution centers to their stores. So that is a supply chain management activity. The retailer has to coordinate that transportation to make sure that the right product gets to the right store at the right time. The retailer also has to keep all the information updated, right? So this is kind of where that information systems comes into play. It's important to know where your merchandise is. Is it sitting in a distribution center? Is it sitting on a shelf in a store? Is it in transit, or has it already been sold to the customer? So those are very important things to note. And this does help retailers keep their product at a reasonable level. The retailer is responsible for placing orders for product, and it's important that those orders are placed accurately and timely to make sure that they, again, are delivered to the right place at the right time. Retailers are also responsible for collecting and processing returned merchandise. So that is a supply chain management activity. If a customer returns a product to the store, the retailer has to decide, are we going to keep it and set it back out on the shelf? Are we going to send it back to the manufacturer? So that's an activity that we'll talk about in more detail a little bit later. When retailers were predominantly small businesses, the manufacturer generally dictated when, where, and how merchandise was delivered. But today, the retailer, clearly, based on what we just talked about, the retailer has a say in all of those decisions. So again, it goes back to that relationship that you have. And the stronger the relationship that the retailer has with the manufacturers, the more decision-making power the retailer is going to have. And the retailer likes to have some of that decision-making power so that they can ensure that they do have the inventory they need at the right time.